Welcome back to the second part of Luria-Delbruck experiments. Before we go into the details of this experiment, we have to know some basic things. The first thing that we have to know is we are taking here a E. coli culture and you are inoculating it into a media. And as the time passes, what happens? E. coli is found to increase in number. You can see in 1 hour you have a density of so much bacterial cells, but by the 1 day time, almost 1 billion of bacterial cells will be formed. And Luria and Delbruck at the same time, it was in fact Luria who started the experiment, and he saw that when he was taking E. coli and growing in them, and he wanted to isolate some bacteriophages. So he took some samples and inoculated them into the E. coli cells which were being given here. The T1 phages were being inoculated into this plate, into the E. coli cells, and it was being found that at the very beginning, when a culture was grown from a single cell and then exposed to the phage, all the infected E. coli cells died. Okay, that is when you put this E. coli cells here, and if there was a phage here, the phage was eating the whole E. coli cells, and at the very beginning. So all the E. coli cells here was considered to be as sensitive to the phage or the T1 phage, and so he called them the T1 sensitive cells. At the same time, when you left the E. coli cells for a few hours along with the virus, you can see that virus resistant E. coli cells started growing and the culture revives itself. That is, other than forming a full plaque here like that, there were certain regions where the E. coli started to grow, and he called it as a T phage resistant cell. So these were the two type of cells which he observed when he exposed a bacteriophage to the E. coli cell. At the initial stage, all the E. coli cells were getting sensitive to the bacteriophage, T1 bacteriophage, but when they were being exposed for a few hours or days, the virus resistant E. coli cells were being developed. Now that was something which was confusing to him, and so if you are having a phage resistant colony, what happens is when the phage has been exposed, some of the E. coli cells will not die, okay, and they will multiply. Okay, the resistant cells will transfer their resistance to next other cells, and a group of cells would be grown irrespective of the presence of the phage in, and that would result in the formation of a phage resistant colony, which Luria had observed in his experiment. Now this was something which needed an explanation, and many biologists held the view that these surviving E. coli were the descendant of cells that had developed resistance to the phage as a result of some direct interaction between the virus and the bacteria. Whereas there were some people who argued that this resistance mutations arose randomly. So there were two main theories which were there raised because of this occurrence of resistant E. coli cells when they were exposed to the phages. One was the induced mutation theory, which states that the resistance was developed because of some interactions between the virus and the bacteria, in turn meaning that the presence of the phage had induced a mutation in the bacteria, and that's how the resistance was developed. That is the theory called the induced mutation theory. And there were some people who were saying that it was randomly developed. Now he need to find an explanation to this. What was the reason for the occurrence of the phage resistant E. coli bacterial cells? Now let me just explain to you what is the induced hereditary model. In an induced hereditary model, if you are inoculating a phage sensitive cells are there, they will grow and they will form 1 billion cells per ml, and then when you put them onto a plate which already contains phage, what happens? The induction of the phage resistant mutations, that is, the interactions happen between these two, and some of them will become resistant, and phage killing would also happen at the other places, and phage resistant colonies will be formed. This is a hypothesis which was being given for the induced hereditary model. Even now, the theory was not being proved. It was just a hypothesis that it could be by the induced mutation hypothesis. Okay, it was not a theory, but it was not being proved. It was only a hypothesis. So now, if you go to consider this example, if you consider one bacterial cell and it multiplies for one generation, you get 2 cells, and in the second generation you will get 4 cells. Third generation again you are getting 8 cells, and again in the fourth generation you are getting 16 cells. So as per the induced hereditary hypothesis, you can think that what is it? The mutation will come only in the generation at which you are adding the T1 phage. That means mutations are not allowed to happen in the third, second, or in the first generation, but the mutation can happen only where in the generation where the T1 phage is being added, that is in the fourth generation. And consider a situation in which we have 3 points or 3 resistant bacterial colonies which have been formed here. Okay, and we do expect that if such a mutation or such an induced based mutation has happened, the same result should be expected even if you repeat the experiment once more. This is a duplicate of the same. So that is, you have one tube here and you have another tube here which has the same experiment duplicated. No, so if the induced mutation theory is correct, the mutation should occur only in the generation where the mutagen is added, as we had mentioned earlier, and the rate of mutation should be consistent for repeated experiments. That means in the first experiment if only 3 are mutated, in the second experiment also only 3 should be formed. So this is about the induced hereditary model. So when he saw a mutation at the very beginning, he thought like, okay, these are the 2 ways, 2 hypotheses which can come. If it is induced, he will get a situation like this. Okay, and let's go and analyze the spontaneous mutation model. So if it is the spontaneous mutation model, here when the inoculum is inoculated with the phage sensitive cells are taken and they are allowed to grow, the phage resistant cells are coming during the growth of culture, even before the exposure to the phages, and some among these, that is the unsensitized E. coli cell itself, will get a mutant and it will multiply. And as a rule, it is already known that a mutation has always been transferred towards the next generation. So by the time we get a 1 billion cells per ml, what happens? It will imply that more amount of phage resistant E. coli cells will be developed, because there is a time, it is happening not at the 1 hour time, it's in this duration before the exposure, that is the 1 day duration as we mentioned earlier, before the exposure, bacteriophage exposure is coming, we are seeing the cells here. So as we expect, as on the plate, we do expect that more resistant bacterial cells will be formed if it is a spontaneous mutation which is happening. And as we mentioned here, spontaneous mutation can occur randomly irrespective of the presence of mutagen, and it can happen in any generation. It can happen either in the first generation, second generation, third generation, or in the fourth generation. And if it is happening in the third generation, as you have seen here, only 3 cells would be formed. But if it is happening in the first generation, it will lead to a large number of resistant cells. So the spontaneous theory would state that mutations will happen spontaneously irrespective of the exposure to the phage, and the number of mutations or the mutant cells which have been arising would be will not be consistent. They will not be the same always. In some tubes probably you would get 3, but there are some tubes, if you are having another tube, probably in that tube the mutation will be happening in the first generation itself. So in that tube probably you will be getting many number of the same. And if you are having a mutation in the second generation, you will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 cells would be probably mutated. That is, you would get 7 different resistant cells. So as per the spontaneous mutation concept, you could have different types of skewedness. That is, what does it means? The data itself will be highly variant from each plate to the other, or if you duplicate this experiment at several times, what happens? The number of mutations which have been present in the tubes would be highly different, because mutations can happen at different rate in different tubes. So that is the spontaneous mutation model. So these are the two things I'm just summarizing. Till now we have not gone into the experiment what he did to prove which is correct. I'm just explaining to you what is induced theory and what is spontaneous theory. So let me conclude. If we are having an induced theory, what happens? Always we would have the number of the mutation will happen only in the presence of the T1 phage, and the number of mutations will be consistent in all the experimental replicas which we do. If you do 5 replicas, 5 tubes containing the same, the 5 tubes will contain only 3. This can happen here 1, 2, 3, and it can happen 1, 2, 3. That is only due to the presence of the bacteriophage, induced mutation can happen, and the results should be consistent. But if it is a spontaneous theory, or if a mutation has been caused by a spontaneous event, the mutations can happen randomly, irrespective of the presence of the T1 phage. That is, if T1 phage is there or not, the mutation can happen. It can happen either in the third generation, it can happen in the second generation, or it can happen in the first generation. So depending upon which generation it forms, the number of resistant colonies would be different. Now here, the first generation. So these were the things which he kept in his mind when he went to do and analyze what was the cause of the mutation which were resulted in the formation of phage resistant E. coli cells. Okay, he did a first initial experiment and he saw that there are certain E. coli cells which are getting resistant to the phage, but later on he had to do some more experiments to check whether they were based upon the induced theory or based upon the spontaneous theory. So we'll be going into the details of the second set of experiments which he did in the coming sessions. Thank you for now.